All right, and let's begin. We're going to settle in with a prelude from our musicians. Thank you so much to Hans for centering us with beautiful music as you do each week. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbia online. We are a church of deep connection and courageous love, and we are a church learning what it means to be church in troubling and world-opening times. We are a church remembering that our congregation is not a building, but that our congregation is the connection between people who are seeking to bless this world, seeking to embody love between and among and beyond us. And so we gather remembering that this morning. We gather grateful to be together in the ways that we are finding to be together. And we gather grateful for some of the gifts that lie hidden in difficult times, particularly this morning, the gift of having people joining us from all across the country. And so if you are visiting today, welcome. If you are logging in from somewhere other than mid-Missouri this morning, we are so grateful and glad that you are logging in to join us. We want to particularly welcome our friends from the UU Fellowship in Jefferson City, our sister congregation just a little ways down the road from us, and we are grateful to have you worshiping with us, and just all visitors and friends, people who might be checking out the UU Church in these times when you can do so from the comfort of your own home. Welcome, welcome. It is good to be together in this way. You can visit our website, uucomo.org, anytime to check out the other things that are going on in the life of our congregation. And we'd be glad to welcome you there as well. I do want to give you a couple of just tech instructions and welcome. So we are using Zoom and Facebook Live as our platforms for worshiping in these times. For those of you with us on Zoom, you'll notice that we're on webinar setting, which means that for most of you, unless you are one of our panelists speaking, we can't see or hear you. And so we hope that you will just be comfortable where you are. If your dog is barking or child is crying, it's not going to bother us. If you are on the couch in your jammies, I'm really glad that you're very comfortable. If you need to laugh hysterically or sob uncontrollably, you do that. And know that we are holding you in spirit, but also not watching you. So we hope that this is a lovely and loving experience for you in your homes. For those who wish to see each other and greet one another, we will hold a coffee hour in Zoom meeting setting after the service, when you'll get the chance to chat with one another, say hello, check in, and go into small breakout rooms to have deeper conversation with one another. And so we very much invite you to join us during that time as well. We also want to tell you just a couple of things about the security features that we have to ensure that, that we are creating a worship space that is safe and comfortable for everyone. And primarily that means that we are keeping the chat on when we're chatting, but then turning it off between times when we're chatting, so that if anyone were to be trying to log in to troll us, that would be a little bit harder to do. So if the chat is turned off for a time, just know that it'll come back on when we're ready to engage with one another again. And there's nothing wrong. It's just the settings that we've chosen. And that being said, I'd like to thank our tech team who have been on a huge learning curve all together, figuring out how we can create this beautiful space with one another. Thank you to our tech team members today, Tim Dickerson and Holly Daly and Dottie Matthews, for helping create the space. And lastly, I would like to introduce to you this morning's service. Our congregation, the UU Church of Columbia, has an extremely long and beloved history of lay-led worship. We began as a lay-led fellowship in 1951 when some folks who were interested in liberal religion in mid-Missouri gathered together and led one another. And so we have a very strong tradition of what we call lay-led worship, which means that we hear from lots of voices among us. Around once a month, we have a service that's led by some of our lay people, some of our leaders. And so we are incredibly grateful for this tradition, and particularly grateful in this time when we have been learning how to do all the tech of worship, that our lay leaders are willing to jump in and try it. And so I just want to thank you to our leaders this morning. This is our Green Sanctuary team. We have Kathy and Roger Nettleton, Allie Gassman, Ellen Thomas, Carol Simon, and Jan Weaver are all on with us this morning from that team, ready to lead us in worship, having learned all about how to do Zoom worship so quickly and with such gameness. So thank you to you all for being willing to join us in this way, for being willing to share the wisdom of your hearts in these times, and for creating an experience of reflection and inspiration for us this morning. With that, that's the last you're going to hear from me until our closing words, as I turn it over to our team to lead us. So thank you for joining us, to all of you attending. Thank you for leading us, to our Green Sanctuary team. And I'm going to pass it over to Roger for our opening words.
Good morning. I'm sorry I missed the unmute button at the beginning. But we are in a time of restricted activity, self-isolation, a time of waiting. Waiting is not necessarily a horrible thing. It can be about waiting for the right time to begin something important and to prepare for it, to emerge from our necessary time of social distancing. We can take inspiration from seeds, as Hope Jarand has done in this reading. A seed knows how to wait. Most seeds wait for several years before starting to grow. A cherry seed can wait for 100 years with no problem. What exactly each seed is waiting for is known only to that seed. Some unique trigger, combination of temperature, moisture, light, and many other things is required to convince a seed to jump off the deep end and to take its chance, to take its one and only chance to grow. A seed is alive while it waits. Every acorn in the ground is just as alive as the 300-year-old oak tree that towers over it. Neither the seed nor the old oak is growing. They are both just waiting. When you go into a forest, you probably tend to look up at the plants that have grown so much taller than you ever could. You probably don't look down where just beneath your single footprint sits between 100 and 1,000 seeds, each one alive and waiting. When you are in the forest, for every tree that you see, there are no less than 3 million more trees waiting in the soil, fervently wishing to be. When the embryo within a seed starts to grow, it basically just stretches out its doubled over waiting posture, elongating into official ownership of the form that it assumed years ago. The hard coat that surrounds a peach pit, a sesame or mustard seed, or a walnut shell mostly exists to prevent its expansion. In the laboratory, we simply scratch the hard coat and add a little water, and it's enough to make almost any seed grow. I must have cracked thousands of seeds over the years, and yet the next day's green never fails to amaze me. Something so hard can be so easy if you just have a little help. In the right place, under the right conditions, you can finally stretch out into what you're supposed to be. Each beginning is the end of a waiting. Our waiting will come to an end. Let us wait and prepare for our emergence. Every replete tree was first a seed that waited. And now we will have the opportunity to join Jeremy in singing hymn number 297 from our gray hymnal, The Star of Truth, the lyrics for which will appear on your screen.
I can't start video, but that's okay. All right, we are good. Yeah. The star of truth but dimly shines behind the veil and clouds of night, but every searching eye divines some partial glimmer of its light. The certainty for which we crave, no mortal ones can ever know. Uncharted waters we must brave, and face whatever winds may blow. Though for safe harbor we may long, we must not let our courage fail. And though the winds of doubt blow strong, upon the trackless ocean sail. From honest doubt we shall not flee, nor fetter the inquiring mind. For where the hearts of all are free, a truer faith we there shall find.
As we light our chalices, the symbol of our faith, at home or digitally, will you please join me in lifting your voices in homes across our city, country, and world to share our weekly words of affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now let us take a moment to center ourselves, to be fully present in this moment, this time. Cast off your worries for just a little while. Take 3 cleansing breaths. As you do, let your mind expand and body relax. Feel your heartbeat. Feel the rhythm of the earth. Breathe for a moment. Settle into this time. And now Carol will lead us in joys and concerns.
Good morning. We have reached the time in our service when we hold one another in heart across the distance, knowing that our community is with us and that we are held in love amid life's sorrows and joys alike, now and always. I will begin by sharing a message that was shared on our website. We want to join our hearts with Ruth Millage, who shares the joy that Lois and Lucas have recovered from COVID-19. I invite you now to share your joys and sorrows with the community in the chat. I will read as many of those as I can. Okay, Samuel Otten says joy for virtual religious education experiences. Marcia Wiley shares joy for the glorious spring. Carol Bontempo says it's a joy to have Zoom to connect with others. Larry and Kire say, my brother has returned home from the hospital. I'm not sure he's ready. Let's see. Jan Weaver shares a joy that she's going to have a driveway visit with her dad this afternoon. Patty Dawes is thankful for great friends who will listen. Joy Lyle shares a joy. I have 2 new great job prospects. Ellen Thomas shares a joy to have spent time with her son, Jack. He's back in Missouri, going to start a new job farming vegetables. Sarah Shipley is thankful and proud of her parents. They donated money to feed hospital workers in Washington, Missouri. We're thankful that when we have resources to share. Dottie Matthews is concerned for those dealing with depression and for whom the confinement is difficult. Lisa Guillory is grateful that her parents are well. Our minister, Molly, shares the joy for the birth of a new baby in our community. That's Julia and John Bonham Hardy's new baby girl, Hazel. Lisa Sani shares a joy for neighborhood social distancing and a get-together last night on a large driveway. Lisa Kent is grateful for the sunshine. I think we can all share that one. And the beautiful day. A lot of thanks for the weather. Peter says that the turtles were very happy in Twin Lakes this morning. Everyone seems to be thankful for the weather, the sunlight. Lorraine is grateful for Friends of the Earth. Well, thank you all that shared together. Our community holds these and many other joys, sorrows, and concerns. We're thinking of one another and holding one another as we make our way through this difficult time. Now, please join us in singing the next hymn, Winds Be Still. It's number 83 in the hymnal, or the words will be on the screen.
Winds be still, storm clouds pass and silence come, peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, light of love, and in calm let all find tranquility. shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony.
Good morning. There are many lessons of nature can teach us, but after a little research, we settled on 3 characteristics of nature that we thought would be useful to keep in mind as we navigate these unsettling times. They are persistence, adaptation, and connection. I'll start out with persistence. From Henry David Thoreau, quote, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach and not when I die discover I had not lived," end quote. Okay, I have to admit I've not read the works of Thoreau. Maybe it would be a good time to do that. Instead, I took to the internet to read what others have written, to get fresh insights into the world as it is today. I focused my reading on what nature has to teach us, especially now as we in many cases have had to slow down and hibernate in a sense. I took to the internet to find a little hope in a world that seems to be out of control. But is it out of control? Well, maybe the human part of the world is out of control, but what about the rest of nature? The apple trees are still blooming, the birds are singing and nesting, the tree frogs are croaking, the water lilies are coming back in the local ponds. The simple yet complex rules of nature continue. Trees still leaf out, the rains come, the grass grows. Then after searching for answers on the internet, I found if I just looked out my back door or in my own memory, I could find some of the answers for which I had been searching. I look at the tree branches. Trees have always fascinated me. See how the branches reach out, how they sway in the wind? You can see where there's been a storm in the past by the way the branches are bent. I think of the redwoods I visit in California, how the roots are shallow, but they tangle together with the roots of neighboring trees to keep themselves upright. Working together, the trees adapt using what is nearby and bending when they must. Life goes on. Nature is not good or bad, it just is. The robins do not judge the sparrows, the geese do not judge the ducks. Crabgrass and bluegrass, unfortunately, grow in the same plot of dirt. Viruses do what viruses do, and life goes on. Volcanoes erupt, hurricanes hit the coast, fires ravage forests. But out of this chaos, good things can happen. Volcanoes enrich the soil, gives us precious gems and building materials, and play a vital role in periodically cooling off the planet. Hurricanes bring needed rainfall to dry places, help to provide a global heat balance, along with replenishing barrier islands and inland plant life. After a fire in the forest, new life appears in the form of grasses and flowers and new, healthier trees. Nature responds to destruction by creating new life because that's how nature is. Life goes on. What I notice that we all sometimes forget is that humans are part of nature as well. We're not separate from nature. Therefore, we need to adapt and find our place on this earth in a way that works with the rest of nature, not contrary to the rest of nature. We need to be like the rest of nature to learn new ways of living and make sense of our new reality. Just as new soil is formed by volcanoes and new life springs from a forest ravaged by fire, we need and will figure out a new way to not only survive, but thrive. Life goes on. To close, I chose a statement from John Robbins, author of A Diet for a New America and a UU contributing author. Quote, "Humans are part of the web of life. What we do to the planet, what we do to other species, and what we do to other people, we end up doing to ourselves. Life goes on. May it be so."
Good morning. I'm taking adaptation. Life on Earth has dealt with changes for 3.5 billion years by adapting to new circumstances. It uses mutations, jumping genes, and mutualisms, among other things, to adapt. What can we learn from these three biological strategies to help ourselves and society survive and thrive in these times? Mutations are when there's a change in the DNA that gets incorporated into a chromosome. Most mutations have no effect. A very small number of these changes can be harmful or helpful depending on the circumstances. For example, people with 2 copies of the HBC mutation in their chromosomes have almost complete resistance to malaria with very few side effects. Jumping genes are when a gene in one species is copied and transferred to a different species of bacteria. For example, jumping genes are what allows antibiotic resistance that evolves in one species of bacteria to spread so quickly to a different species of bacteria. Mutualisms are when 2 different species have a close, long-term relationship that benefits both species. For example, trees depend on fungi that grow around and into their roots, and that can actually double the area over which trees get water and nutrients. The fungi, in turn, draw out sugars produced by the tree. Win-win. Biological evolution is too slow to help us in times like these, but we can evolve as individuals and as societies. So what do the concepts of mutation, jumping genes, and mutualism have to teach us about change? For our minds, it is the connections between neurons that encode who we are instead of strands of DNA. These connections, inherited from primate ancestors and shaped by our experiences, form our mental model of the world and our patterns of thought. With DNA, mutations are mostly random, but we can consciously affect the rate and direction of the changes in our thoughts by what we choose to expose ourselves to. It can be new sources of information, new concepts or skills, or new acquaintances. The lesson is that we can construct a more adaptive model of the world by actively opening up to it. Be more curious about the world. When a beneficial gene jumps a species boundary, the new species has been spared the slow and uncertain path of evolving the gene on its own. Likewise, society can benefit from the rapid spread of beneficial ideas. The shortage of personal protective equipment for frontline workers inspired people across the country to create PPE from materials at hand and then share their designs on the internet. The lesson is that we can all benefit from each other's creativity. Share your ideas. They may be just what is needed. I probably don't even need to explain the lesson of mutualism. The problem is that we tend to take the existence of mutualistic relationships for granted. For example, our hero stories are all about how the hero slays the dragon by himself. Yet the hero's first test is always about showing kindness to someone less powerful, who then provides the key without which the hero would fail. The lesson is that if we want to slay the dragons that beset us in these times, we need to recognize and celebrate that first test in all our hero stories, and we need to learn how to do relationships better. No one does it alone. Nature's only test of new adaptations is that they improve survival. Survival is not enough. Whatever changes we choose to make in ourselves and in society, they will need to be based on mutual care, restorative justice, and healing the world.
Being home so much has allowed me to have a more regular schedule. I try to get up at the same time every morning, my main motivation being to take the dogs for a walk early. Early before there are cars on the street or other people walking, a time that allows for quiet and social distancing. I can mark how time has passed since the stay-at-home order was first issued by how the sun is now just rising above the ridge when I walk out the door. I leave every morning burdened not only with my petty everyday types of anxieties, but with the weight of the world that is now engulfed in a pandemic. The weight of knowing that my mother's in a hospital far away on another continent, suddenly hardly reachable. The sun rising there in the east nevertheless sends rays of hope. I enter the forest. I puff up the first little hill, reminded that I have asthma, reminded that I was going to have it checked out finally this fall. Will that be possible? My mind goes to an article by Stefano Mancuso, an Italian plant neurobiologist. His work focuses on how plants interact and cooperate with each other living beings, and with their environment. He ends his article by saying that this pandemic is a message from natural systems that are out of whack, and that it's kind of like the mafia. First, they warn you and destroy a little bit. If you don't listen, they explode a bomb, and then you're dead. And if we don't listen to this warning in the form of a coronavirus, then climate catastrophe will do us in. Two chickadees are calling to each other. I hear and then see the woodpecker on the tree right next to me. For a moment, I am transfixed. What a blessed racket. I start to think more seriously about what would happen if I got COVID-19. It would be so scary. I feel like I'm having trouble breathing right at this moment. But look, the mayflowers are already blooming right at this spot. It's a carpet of wildflowers in front of me, such delicate and effervescent beings. Effervescent just like me. The birds, the flowers, and I, and my ancestors, and my mother and the trees. We are all made of the same stuff. When I die, be it soon or in the far future, I will go where the birds, the flowers, the trees, my ancestors all went and will go. My ancestors are in this bird, in this flower, and in me, and I am in them. This comforts me. I walk on up the steep slope. My breath is easier. There's some dog business that must be taken care of. As I emerge from the woods again, the distant trees are bathed in glorious golden sunlight. I feel ready for the day, ready for what is ahead, cradled in the knowledge that all is connected, that no living being can do anything alone, that all depend on all. May we humans live this out before it's too late. May I live this out before it's too late. As we mentioned at the beginning of our joint homily, there are many things we can learn from nature. We're going to open the chat and invite you to share lessons from nature you think are helpful or important. From Larry and Kira, nature is resilient. From Lindsay Smith and her kids, many colors make up a world. From Susan Carr, I am nature. From Sarah Naji, constant growth and development. From Joy Lyle, there are different seasons for different moods and ways of being. From Megan Cates, nature reminds us that sometimes you have to wait. From Robin Duplay, my 6-year-old daughter says nature is beautiful and reminds us to never litter. From Molly Hausch-Gordon, so much happens and prepares in deep, dark soil and unknowing. From Angie Matthews Stewart, This time has allowed Hans to create more beautiful songs. From Sydney, Kent, I have allergies from pollen sometimes. From Jackie Bell, beauty returns regardless of what's happening around it. From Dottie Matthews, regardless of how difficult the times, the sun comes up again. From Mindy, nature moves on without knowledge of the future. Nature is my religion. From Vic Myers. There are creatures in the deepest parts of the ocean and the topmost points of mountains, and they find comfort in their place. We need only find our place, which will be the same for us. Well, thank you so much for sharing. One more from Lynn Malley. Nature does not need to think about being connected. It just is. And from James Chanteau, it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive. Well, thank you so much for sharing. For the offering today, Ellen asked Jim Scott if we could share the Corona version of his Gather the Spirit. You can donate at the link provided in the chat.
I wrote this song 30 years ago so my friend Pat Lamana could give it this contemporary message. Gather in spirit, not face to face. Let's do what we can to flatten the curve. Wash your hands often and don't touch your face. This virus is something no one
our thanks to Jim. For the past couple of weeks, as I have logged into the service, I have looked out my window at my beautifully flowering cherry trees. Of course, with times, the flowers have faded, but I'm grateful. My slowed down life, more based at home, has allowed me to notice those flowers daily, from the first bud to the spectacular peak to the fading of the blossoms. This next poem, Loveliest of Trees, by English poet A.E. Housman, speaks to the transience of nature's beauty. I've loved this poem since I was about the age of the poet as he speaks, 20 years old. Now the math has flipped for me, so I read it with more wistfulness and urgency. I also know that where the blossoms have faded, little green cherries will soon appear, and with luck ripen into beautiful and tasty bright red fruit. But I also know all the things that can go wrong. Did that last frost get them? Will there be disease? A virus, maybe. Or will the deer get the trees or the birds the fruit before I do? All of these are possible, maybe probable, making every cherry pie I am able to bake something of a miracle. And isn't that what we are relearning? That like the cherries, each human life is fragile and transient, to be loved and cherished while it is miraculously with us. Loveliest of Trees by A.E. Housman. Loveliest of trees, the cherry now is hung with bloom along the bough and stands about the woodland ride wearing white for Eastertide. Now, of my 80 years and 10, 20 will not come again, and take from 70 springs a score, it only leaves me 50 more. And since to look at things in bloom, 50 springs are little room, about the woodlands I will go to see the cherry hung with snow. Please join us now in singing our next hymn, number 350, which will have the words on the screen, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time, and enjoy some of the nature mandalas created during last week's service as we sing.
The ceaseless flow of endless time, no one can check or stay. We'll view the past with no regret, or future with dismay. The present slips into the past, and dreamlike melts away. The breaking of tomorrow's dawn begins anew today. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now, to make each day a thing complete, shall we our new year vow.
Thank you to the Green Sanctuary team for creating such a beautiful service that has given me just what I needed on this day and in this moment, and that will sustain us in the week to come. I'd like to invite us to close together, and I will give our opening words, and then we'll sing our benediction, our closing words, and then we'll sing our benediction. These closing words I've been using each week through this time are from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Even especially now in this time, none of us is alone. We are with one another across the distance. And so go in blessing, friends, and be a blessing to a world that needs our care. Let us sing our benediction from our homes across the city and state and country. I invite you to take the hands of the people with you in your home, or put your hand over your heart and imagine that you are with us together as we sing our weekly benediction that we have sung together across years.
Now